Before it began its transformation into the J Resort, there was a festering cesspool that I found myself quite fond of. Slots were loose, drinks were cheap, vibe was local, and the customer service was on point. A place where the dealers openly cheered for the players, and the cocktail waitresses were friendly and made the rounds quick. Join me as I briefly pay homage to the Sands Regency. Outside the Sands at the main entrance was one of the gaudiest and most glorious neon fixtures to ever grace a gambling establishment. It was easily the greatest thing about the property, and stands as the only true loss of the renovation. One of my favorite pictures of myself was taken in front of this signage, and I hope it is preserved, but it was integrated into a roof, so I don't know how practical an idea that is. For years, the slogan was, "It's all good," and man, people did everything they could to lean into that suggestion. If you entered through the doors under the sign, you were greeted by a cluttered layout that had very little rhyme or reason to it. Just a 5-foot walk, and you were on the casino floor, free to degenerate away. To the right was the main bar of the house. Now, drinking at the Sands was a treat. I ribbed it gently, but the place was popular. The drinks were cheap, and the crowd was low class. So the dollar beers, they were always super fresh. Now, I've been trashed at the Sands, and the floor wasn't that big, so you'd think it was easy to stand out as a loud drunken clown, but no. The shit show to square footage ratio was enough to keep the heavily disengaged security staff busy. This kept it loose and fun, and the people watching was dynamite. The 80s music was a soundtrack. Any genre and style there within. We're talking Kickstart My Heart, followed by Mickey, and then Shiny Happy People. Every corner had a TV playing the corresponding music video as well. And this was actually a channel in the room too, in case you didn't want the party to stop. And I saw many people taking the oft-quoted advice on audience devoid dancing in respect to their approach, and they had it nailed. Dancing not only like no one was watching, but also like no one was capable of watching. I'll never forget one night when I was walking past the check-in counter towards the backroom bar and being stopped by a lady grooving to the appropriately titled Dancing with Myself by Billy Idol and bouncing her booty off my big belly while singing Sweat, Sweat, Sweat. I turned to security. He's laughing. So I just laughed too. Because, it's all good. The Sands would periodically have a poker room, and what an experience that was. For starters, it wasn't a room or even a separate corral. It was right in the middle of the casino floor like it was any other table game. And that's an important detail. Most poker rooms or corrals are non-smoking. Since this wasn't off on its own, you could smoke right there at the table. And I remember at one point, one of the regulars asked another player for a drag of his cigarette, something I had never seen before, nor have I seen since. But that's how it was at the Sands. So all good that the lines of basic human boundaries were quite blurred. That, however, I have to say is not unique to the Sands, as many low roller centric dive casinos have this element. In fact, Reno has a couple of more of these. The Diamond Casino underneath the Ramada comes to mind right off the bat, Cal Neva. Now, let's talk about the restaurants and amenities that were there. Now, there was a time where the Sands was my joint, completely based upon my economic situation. Nobody chose the Sands. You accepted the Sands and made a personal vow to do better, that this was just where you had to stay for now. But yet, I still loved it. The dollar beers and wells, the weird patrons, the weathered yet wonderful staff, the super loose video poker. And for a long time, they had an Arby's, which I know get a lot of flack, but it's one of my favorite fast food joints. Now, aside from Arby's, which was eventually replaced by Tacos Tijuana, which did have really good breakfast plates, especially the huevos rancheros, I tell people, do not sleep on desayuno. Get yourself Mexican breakfast. It's delicious. Besides the Tacos Tijuana, Arby's, there was also Mel's, which was always a solid meal, and a Tony Roma's ribs. The Tony Roma's used to have one of those famous Casino Primers specials for under $10, much like the Tony Roma's that's located on Fremont. It still has to this day under certain hours. But eventually, the Tony Roman name was removed, and the space became the in-house Copa Grill, which was like a TGI Fridays, except Copa remembered to make the food edible. That is an important distinction. They also had a fun and cheap, fancy cocktail menu with top shelf booze. The Copa Grill had a low-rent stepbrother in the Cabana Cafe, which was a lot like the deli and hot food section at a Walmart. The buffet was limited, but had good food and a good price. It also featured prime rib on the weekend. Now let's talk about the hotel. Staying at the Sands was something else altogether. There was an ecosystem within the hotel that was completely self-functioning on a level somewhere between 80s Grateful Dead parking lot and a crack house fantasy camp, all right? But the room was only $20, and casinos hadn't pulled the term resort fee out of their collective asses yet. It was what it was, no complaints. I remember waiting for the elevator going down from our room. The dude next to us was smoking meth out of a tiny glass piece, and my associate on that trip was carrying about low shower pressure. Read the room, baby. What's that? Flat hair? Look, fucker. We told you already it's all good. And that goes both ways. Now, why don't you shut up before I decide to start holding $100 on your Go Bank prepaid card and mess up your whole trip? It was an open secret. It was an open secret. You do what you want. We aren't fixing a damn thing. Now, don't ever read that as if to say their customer service was lacking, because it was not. Every single cocktail waitress, bartender, slot attendant, floor person, and security guard had a smile and pleasant demeanor. They cared about the players and were excellent at recognizing a face. The bartenders could go a couple months without seeing you, and they still remembered your name and your drink. This attitude was key to the whole thing. When you're at a place that loose, selling booze that cheaply to people this classless, keeping it from becoming a riot at the zoo was an art. Now, discussing the future of the Sands, the construction is mostly completed to transform this beloved golden turd into a property of luxury and opulence. The head of Jacobs Entertainment, Jeffrey Jacobs, says he wants the newly branded J Resort to be the Bellagio of Reno. Now, I apologize if you just spit out your beverage. What, may you ask, would even be the point of a Bellagio in the Reno of today, which in itself is a sad shadow of its own former glory? However, that's not much different from what the Sands at one point meant to accomplish itself. In 1965, Pete Clandios opened a place called the Sands in a gambling town at the height of the Rat Pack. I'm sure that was pure coincidence. In 1970, he added a small 40-slot gaming area and 24 more rooms, but these in a hotel enclosing, unlike the original motel rooms. Place was a hit, especially for not having an action-adjacent location in its early days, and kept growing until finally a 15-story hotel tower was added and the Sands Resort era was launched. The Vegas property did take notice of this unaffiliated property and forced them to eventually change their name to, I think, what most of us recognize as the Sands Regency. But in the end, it outlasted the original. Now, nobody builds a hotel tower unless they mean for it to be a nice place. Really, the downfall into all goodness came in 2005 with Hearst Gaming and their tragically unironic Terribles Casino label. Seriously, if you look at a list of their properties, you see their business strategy is let it go to shit. It's in the company's DNA, as they started as an oil company, and their founder Edward R. Hearst, was described as the P.T. Barnum of gasoline. So I say good luck, Mr. Jacobs. I hope you and your company succeed, and I look forward to staying there. And I'll wear a suit and a tie. Well, pants, slacks, probably a polo. All right. You can't pin me down on that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane as I shared with you my memories of the Sands. Please like and subscribe. put a thumbs up for me. It helps the channels, or at least every other single person on this site or social media network claims it does. So, I mean, a million Elvis fans can't be wrong. Like and subscribe. Thank you.